The dust from the drought-stricken fields of West Texas swirled around Logan Carter's boots, as he spotted what appeared to be nothing more than a bundle of ragged cloth beneath a lonely mesquite tree. The summer of 1876 had been unforgiving, baking the land until it cracked like old leather, but nothing had prepared the 30-year-old rancher for what he discovered as he approached on horseback a woman. So thin her cheekbones jutted sharply beneath her skin, her eyes closed in exhaustion or worse. "Madam," Logan called, swinging down from his saddle. The woman didn't stir. Her dress, once fine by the look of the fabric, hung in tatters around her frame. Her dark hair was matted with dust and her lips were cracked from dehydration. For a moment, Logan feared he'd found nothing but a corpse, until a shallow breath caused her chest to rise ever so slightly. Logan fumbled with his canteen, kneeling beside her. He cradled her head gently, tipping a small amount of water between her parched lips. "Easy now," he murmured, though he wasn't sure she could hear him. "Just a little at first." Some of the water dribbled down her chin, but she swallowed reflexively. Logan reached into his saddlebag and retrieved a cloth, dampening it to wipe the dust from her face. As the grime cleared away, he saw that she was young, perhaps mid-20s, with features that might have been beautiful if not ravaged by hunger and exposure. "Can you hear me, madam?" Logan asked, his voice low and gentle. "I've got some bread here if you think you can manage it." The woman's eyelids fluttered, revealing eyes the color of summer storms. She looked at him without comprehension at first, then with unmistakable fear. "No need to be afraid," Logan said quickly. "I'm Logan Carter. I own a small spread about 3 miles east of here." He broke off a tiny piece of bread from the loaf in his saddlebag. "Here, try to eat something." She weakly raised a hand to take the morsel, but her fingers trembled so violently that Logan had to help guide it to her mouth. She chewed slowly, painfully, as if the simple act required all her remaining strength. "What's your name?" Logan asked after she'd swallowed. She licked her cracked lips. "Violet," she whispered, her voice hardly more than a breath. "Violet Kincaid." "Miss Kincaid," Logan acknowledged with a slight nod. "What happened to you? Where's your family?" A shadow passed over her face. "Gone," she managed. "All gone." Logan didn't press for details. The West was unforgiving, and tragedy was as common as the tumbleweeds that blew across the plains. "Can you ride?" he asked. "My place isn't far. You need shelter and proper food." Fear flashed in her eyes again. "I don't know you." "No, madam, you don't," Logan agreed, understanding her wariness. A woman alone had every reason to be cautious. "But you'll die out here, and I can't leave you to that fate," he thought for a moment. "I've got a housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, widowed lady, been with me 5 years. She'll see to your needs." Relief softened Violet's features slightly. "Thank you," she whispered. Logan nodded, then gently lifted her. She weighed almost nothing in his arms, like a bird with hollow bones. He settled her on his horse, then mounted behind her, keeping one arm securely around her waist as they set off toward his ranch. The ride was slow, with Logan careful not to jostle his fragile passenger. Occasionally, he would hold the canteen to her lips or offer another small piece of bread. By the time they reached the modest ranch house, Violet's head was lolling against his chest, consciousness slipping away once more. "Mrs. Abernathy," Logan called as he dismounted, cradling Violet in his arms. The plump, gray-haired woman appeared on the porch, her eyes widening at the sight. "Merciful heavens," she exclaimed, rushing forward. "Who is this poor creature?" "Found her out by Miller's old place," Logan explained, carrying Violet inside. "Says her name's Violet Kincaid, that's all I know." Mrs. Abernathy clucked her tongue, already rolling up her sleeves. "Put her in the spare room. I'll heat water and see what can be done." The next several hours passed in a flurry of activity. Mrs. Abernathy shooed Logan from the room while she bathed Violet, dressed her in one of her own nightgowns, and tucked her into bed. When she finally emerged, her face was grave. "That girl's been through hell, Mr. Carter," she said plainly. "Half-starved and dehydrated, with blisters on her feet that tell me she's walked a mighty long way. There's bruises too, old ones that didn't come from any fall. Logan's jaw tightened. Someone hurt her. Looks that way to me. The housekeeper sighed. She's sleeping now. I got some broth into her, but it'll be a while before she can handle much food. Body forgets how to digest when it's been empty too long. You'll look after her. Of course I will, Mrs. Abernathy said indignantly, as if offended by the very question. I've sent Sammy to town for the doctor. That girl needs more than my home remedies, I reckon. Logan nodded, staring at the closed door of the spare room. Did she say anything about what happened? Not a word. Barely conscious, poor thing. Mrs. Abernathy patted his arm. You did right by bringing her here, Mr. Carter. The good Lord will remember it. Logan wasn't so sure about that. The good Lord, in his experience, had a peculiar way of balancing the books, and Logan had accumulated plenty of debits in his 30 years. But he nodded anyway and retreated to the porch to smoke his pipe and consider the strange turn the day had taken. Dr. Ellsworth arrived as the sun was setting, his buggy kicking up dust as it approached the ranch house. The elderly physician had been tending to the ailments of the county for longer than Logan had been alive, and his expression revealed nothing as he examined Violet. She's suffering from severe malnutrition and exhaustion, he confirmed after emerging from her room. There's evidence of older injuries as well, a poorly healed fracture in her left wrist, some scarring on her back. Scarring? Logan asked, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. The doctor's eyes were tired behind his spectacles. Consistent with a whip or similar implement. He held up a hand at Logan's darkening expression. I don't know the circumstances, Mr. Carter. I'm simply telling you what I've observed. Will she recover? Mrs. Abernathy asked anxiously. With proper care, yes. She's young and appears to have been healthy before, whatever happened. Small meals frequently offered, clean water, rest. He packed his instruments back into his bag. I'll return in 3 days to check on her progress. After the doctor left, Logan found himself standing outside Violet's door, hesitating. It seemed improper to enter a lady's bedroom, but he felt responsible for her in some indefinable way. Finally, he knocked softly. Mrs. Abernathy opened the door. She's awake, she said quietly, and asking for you. Logan entered the room, hat in hand. Violet looked even smaller in the large bed, her face pale against the pillows, but her eyes were clearer now, more focused. Mr. Carter, she said softly. I wanted to thank you properly. Logan nodded awkwardly. No need for that, Miss Kincaid. Anyone would have done the same. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. We both know that's not true. She shifted slightly, wincing. Mrs. Abernathy says I'm to stay until I'm stronger. I want you to know I won't impose any longer than necessary. You're welcome here as long as you need, Logan said firmly. The doctor says you need rest and good food, and that's what you'll get. Violet's eyes filled with tears that she blinked back quickly. Why are you being so kind to a stranger? Logan considered the question. He wasn't known for charity or softness, quite the opposite. His neighbors respected him, but few would call him friend. Yet something about the woman before him had pierced through his carefully constructed armor. I reckon everyone deserves a helping hand sometimes, he said finally. Get some rest, Miss Kincaid. We can talk more when you're stronger. As days turned into weeks, Violet's strength gradually returned. Her hollow cheeks filled out slightly, and color returned to her face. She began to take short walks around the house, leaning on Mrs. Abernathy's arm at first, then venturing outside to sit on the porch and watch the ranch hands at work. Logan kept his distance, not wanting to make her uncomfortable. But he found his eyes drawn to her when she didn't notice, watching the breeze play with a strand of her dark hair, or observing how the sunlight illuminated her face as she tilted it skyward. Mrs. Abernathy noticed, of course. That girl's getting prettier by the day, isn't she? She commented one evening as she served Logan his dinner. Logan grunted noncommittally, focusing on his food. She's been asking about you, the housekeeper continued, undeterred. Wondering why you barely speak to her. I don't want to bother her, Logan muttered. Mrs. Abernathy snorted. Nonsense. She feels she's being a burden, thinks you're regretting your charity. Logan looked up sharply. That's not true. Then perhaps you should tell her so. Mrs. Abernathy placed a piece of pie before him with unnecessary force. That girl's been through something terrible, Mr. Carter. She needs to know she's safe here. The next morning, Logan found Violet sitting on the porch swing, a shawl around her shoulders despite the warm temperature. She startled slightly when he approached. "Good morning, Miss Kincaid," he said, removing his hat. "Mind if I join you?" She nodded, making room on the swing. "Please." Logan sat, uncomfortably aware of how little space separated them. "Mrs. Abernathy tells me you're feeling stronger." "Yes," Violet agreed. "Thanks to you and her kindness. I'm glad to hear it." Logan cleared his throat. "She also mentioned you might think you're unwelcome here." Violet looked down at her hands. "I've imposed long enough. Once I'm fully recovered, I should move on." "Where would you go?" Her silence was answer enough. "Miss Kincaid," Logan said carefully, "I don't know what happened to you before we met, and I won't pry, but you're welcome to stay here as long as you need. There's no hurry." Violet's eyes, when they met his, were filled with a complex mixture of gratitude and wariness. "You're a good man, Mr. Carter," Logan almost laughed. "I'm afraid many would disagree with that assessment." "Then they don't know you as I do," she said simply. The statement hung between them, oddly intimate. Logan stood abruptly, feeling a need to create distance. "I should get to work. The cattle won't tend themselves." As he walked away, he could feel her eyes on his back. Something was happening between them, something Logan wasn't sure he was ready for. That evening, as Logan sat on the porch smoking his pipe, Violet joined him again. She moved more confidently now, and she'd borrowed a dress from Mrs. Abernathy that had been taken in to fit her still slender frame. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the chair beside him. "Of course," Logan replied, standing until she was seated. They sat in companionable silence for a time, watching as the sunset painted the western sky in shades of orange and purple. The ranch hands had retired to the bunkhouse, and the only sounds were the occasional lowing of cattle and the chirp of crickets. "I was married," Violet said suddenly, her voice quiet but steady. "His name was Edmund. He seemed so charming when we met. My parents approved he came from a good family, had prospects." Logan remained silent, sensing she needed to tell her story in her own way. "The changes came gradually after we were wed," she continued. "First, it was criticisms. Then anger if dinner wasn't perfect or if I spoke to another man. Then," she took a shaky breath, "he became violent, said it was his right as a husband to correct me." Logan's hands tightened on the arms of his chair, but he forced himself to stay quiet. "My parents had died by then. I had nowhere to go, and Edmund controlled everything, the money, the house, who I could speak to." Violet's voice grew distant. "When I lost our baby last winter, he blamed me. Said I'd done it deliberately." Logan inhaled sharply. "I'm sorry," he said, the words feeling woefully inadequate. Violet nodded. "The beatings got worse after that. I thought he might kill me eventually. So when he left for a business trip last month, I took what little food I could gather and ran." Her lips curved in a humorless smile. "I didn't plan well. The food ran out, I got lost, and then you found me." "He won't find you here," Logan said firmly. "You have my word." Violet turned to look at him, her eyes searching his face. "Why are you doing this, Mr. Carter? Truly," Logan considered his answer carefully. "I've seen what happens when people look the other way. When I was younger, I did that too often. Let things happen I should have stopped." He met her gaze directly. "I'm trying to be better than I was." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded, seeming to accept his answer. "Thank you for listening," she said softly. "I haven't spoken of it to anyone before." "Anytime," Logan replied, meaning it more than he'd expected to. As summer gave way to fall, Violet became a fixture at the ranch. Her strength returned fully, and with it came a quiet determination that Logan admired. She insisted on helping Mrs. Abernathy with household tasks, learning to cook the way the housekeeper did, and even taking over some of the gardening. The ranch hands, initially curious about the mysterious woman their boss had brought home, grew to respect her quiet dignity. Old Sammy, who had worked for Logan's father before him, took to tipping his hat whenever Violet passed, a gesture he reserved for ladies he particularly esteemed. Logan found himself looking forward to their evening conversations on the porch. Violet had an observant mind and a dry wit that emerged as she grew more comfortable. She asked thoughtful questions about the ranch operations, and Logan found himself explaining things he'd never bothered to articulate before. "You've built something remarkable here," she told him one evening as they watched the sunset. "Your father would be proud." Logan glanced at her in surprise. "How did you know about my father?" Mrs. Abernathy mentioned him, Violet admitted. "She said he left you the ranch when you were barely 20, and everyone expected you to lose it within a year." "They weren't wrong to think it," Logan acknowledged, remembering the reckless young man he'd been. "I nearly did lose it. Spent too much time gambling and drinking in town, not enough time working the land." "What changed?" Logan was quiet for a moment, considering. "I had a foreman then, Henry Blackwell. Good man, patient. One night I came back from town, drunk as usual, and found him sitting up with a sick calf. Had been all night with the creature." He shook his head at the memory. "I asked him why he bothered when it wasn't even his ranch. Know what he said?" Violet shook her head. "He said, because it matters to do things right, even when no one's watching. Simple as that." Logan tapped out his pipe against the porch rail. "Made me take a hard look at myself, started changing after that. Henry stayed on till he died 5 years ago." "I wish I could have met him," Violet said softly. "He would have liked you," Logan replied, surprised to find he meant it. As October arrived, bringing cooler temperatures and changing leaves, Logan noticed Violet growing restless. She began taking longer walks, sometimes disappearing for hours before returning to the ranch house, her cheeks flushed from exertion. "Is something troubling Miss Kincaid?" Logan asked Mrs. Abernathy one morning as she served his breakfast. The housekeeper gave him a look that made him feel like a particularly slow-witted child. "She's been here nearly 3 months, Mr. Carter." "Yes," Logan prompted, not understanding. Mrs. Abernathy sighed heavily. "She's trying to figure out her place here. Is she a guest, a charity case? She needs purpose, something that's hers." Logan frowned, considering this. "What would you suggest?" "That's not for me to say," Mrs. Abernathy replied primly, but her expression softened. "Though if you're asking my opinion, that girl lights up whenever you speak to her. Perhaps you might consider what that means." Before Logan could respond, the housekeeper bustled out of the room, leaving him with his thoughts. That afternoon, Logan found Violet by the creek that ran along the eastern edge of his property. She sat on a large rock, skirts carefully arranged around her, watching the water flow past. She looked up as he approached, a smile brightening her face. "Mr. Carter," she greeted him. "Taking a break from your work?" "Looking for you, actually," he replied, dismounting from his horse. He hesitated, then sat on another rock nearby. "Mrs. Abernathy seems to think you're feeling unsettled." Violet's smile faded slightly. "Mrs. Abernathy notices too much. Is she wrong?" Violet sighed, turning back to watch the creek. "No," she admitted. "I'm grateful for everything you've done, Mr. Carter, more than I can express, but I can't be your charity case forever." "You're not a charity case," Logan objected. "What am I then?" she asked, meeting his eyes directly. "I have no money, no family, no prospects. I contribute nothing to this ranch except another mouth to feed." Logan shifted uncomfortably. "You don't need to contribute. You're welcome here regardless." "That's very kind," Violet said, "but it doesn't answer my question." "What am I to you, Mr. Carter?" The directness of her question caught Logan off guard. What was she to him? A woman he'd rescued, certainly. Someone he'd grown to admire for her resilience and quiet strength. Someone whose company he enjoyed more than he'd enjoyed anyone's in a very long time. He began, then faltered. "I don't have a simple answer for that, Miss Kincaid." Disappointment flickered across her face before she schooled her features. "I understand," she said, rising from her seat. "I should return to the house. Mrs. Abernathy will wonder where I've gone." As she walked past him, Logan caught her hand. She stilled, looking down at their joined hands with surprise. "I'm not good with words," Logan said quietly. "Never have been, but I know that when you're not around, I find myself looking for you, and when you smile." He trailed off, feeling foolish. Violet's fingers tightened around his. "When I smile," she prompted gently. "It's like the sun coming out," he finished, meeting her eyes. "I don't know what that means exactly, but I know I don't want you to leave." A soft blush colored Violet's cheeks. "I don't want to leave either," she admitted. Logan stood, still holding her hand. They were close now, close enough that he could see the flecks of blue in her gray eyes, could count the freckles that had appeared across her nose from her time in the sun. "Stay," he said simply. "Not as a guest or a charity case, as whatever this is becoming." Violet's free hand came up to touch his face, her fingers light against his stubbled jaw. "Logan," she said, using his given name for the first time, "I'm afraid." "Of what?" "Of trusting again. Of being wrong about you the way I was wrong about Edmund." Logan turned his head slightly to press a kiss to her palm. "I can't promise I'll never hurt you," he said honestly. "I'm stubborn and set in my ways. I'll say the wrong thing sometimes. But I swear to you, Violet, I will never raise a hand to you in anger. I will never try to control you or break your spirit. That's not the kind of man I am or ever want to be." Tears shimmered in her eyes, but they were different from the tears of fear he'd seen when he first found her. "I believe you," she whispered. Logan didn't know which of them moved first, but suddenly his arms were around her and her head was tucked beneath his chin. They stood that way for a long moment, the sound of the creek providing a gentle backdrop to the thundering of his heart. "What happens now?" Violet asked, her voice muffled against his chest. "I'm not entirely sure," Logan admitted, drawing back slightly to look at her, "but I'd like to court you properly if you're willing." A small smile curved her lips. "I think I'd like that very much." The following weeks brought changes to the ranch. Violet, with her new understanding with Logan, moved through the house with more confidence. Mrs. Abernathy watched their budding courtship with poorly concealed satisfaction, often finding reasons to leave them alone together in the evenings. Logan, for his part, found himself looking at his ranch with fresh eyes. The house, which had always seemed perfectly adequate for a bachelor, now struck him as somewhat Spartan. He ordered new curtains from the general store in town and had the men repair the loose boards on the porch. When a traveling peddler came through with books, Logan purchased several, noting which ones made Violet's eyes light up with interest. Their courtship progressed slowly, deliberately. Logan was careful not to rush Violet, understanding that her previous marriage had left deep wounds that needed time to heal. They took rides together around the property, Violet growing comfortable on horseback under Logan's patient instruction. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, sometimes reading, sometimes talking, sometimes simply enjoying each other's company in comfortable silence. The first time Logan kissed her was on a crisp November evening. They had walked to the creek after supper, bundled against the cooling air. Violet had been telling him about her childhood in Missouri, about the piano lessons her mother had insisted upon, and how she'd always preferred being outdoors. "I used to climb the apple tree behind our house," she recalled, smiling at the memory. "My mother was scandalized, said no proper young lady would do such a thing, but my father would just wink at me when she wasn't looking." "Sounds like you were a handful," Logan observed, enjoying the animation in her face as she spoke of happier times. "I was," she agreed. "Before I learned to be quiet and obedient." Her smile faltered slightly. "Edmund didn't appreciate spirited women." Logan reached for her hand, entwining their fingers. "I do," he said simply. Violet looked up at him, vulnerability and hope mingling in her expression. Logan raised his free hand to cup her cheek, giving her time to pull away if she wished. When she didn't, he lowered his head slowly and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, almost reverential. Violet's lips were soft beneath his, slightly chapped from the autumn air. For a moment, she remained still, and Logan feared he'd moved too quickly. Then her hand came up to rest on his shoulder, and she leaned into him, returning the kiss with a sweetness that made his heart ache. When they parted, Violet's eyes remained closed for a beat longer, her lashes dark crescents against her cheeks. When she opened them, the trust Logan saw there humbled him. "I've been wanting to do that for some time," he admitted. "I've been hoping you would," she replied, a shy smile playing at her lips. As winter settled over the ranch, bringing short days and long nights, Violet and Logan's relationship deepened. The ranch hands exchanged knowing glances when their boss began taking more meals at the house instead of with them. And Mrs. Abernathy found increasingly creative excuses to retire early, leaving the couple alone by the fire. December brought unexpected visitors. Logan was checking the fences with two of his men when he spotted a cloud of dust approaching from the east. As the figures drew closer, he recognized the town sheriff, Walter Davis, accompanied by a well-dressed man Logan didn't know. "Logan," the sheriff greeted him, touching the brim of his hat. "Sorry to disturb you. This is Mr. James Kincaid from St. Louis. Says he's looking for his sister-in-law." Logan's blood ran cold. The man beside the sheriff was impeccably dressed in a suit that had clearly never seen ranch work. His expression was pleasant enough, but there was a coldness in his eyes that set Logan's teeth on edge. "Mr. Carter," Kincaid said smoothly, extending a gloved hand. "I understand you might have information about my brother's wife, Violet." Logan shook the hand briefly, his mind racing. "What makes you think that?" "Word travels," Kincaid replied with a thin smile. "My brother Edmund has been searching for his wife for months. She disappeared while he was away on business, took money from his safe too. He's been quite distraught." "Has he now?" Logan said flatly, not bothering to make it a question. The sheriff shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "Mr. Kincaid has papers proving his claims about Mrs. Kincaid being his brother's lawful wife. If she's here, she's not," Logan interrupted firmly. "Haven't seen any strange women around here, just me, my hands, and my housekeeper." James Kincaid's smile never wavered, but his eyes hardened. "Perhaps I could speak with your housekeeper. She might have noticed something you haven't." "Mrs. Abernathy is in town today," Logan lied easily. "Won't be back till tomorrow, and I've got work to do, gentlemen, if you'll excuse me." The sheriff nodded, clearly relieved to be leaving. "Come on, Mr. Kincaid, we can check the Davies place next." "Of course," Kincaid agreed smoothly, "but I think I'll return tomorrow to speak with Mrs. Abernathy, if you don't mind, Mr. Carter." Logan gave a non-committal nod and watched as the two men rode away. As soon as they were out of sight, he turned to his ranch hands. "Sammy, ride back to the house. Tell Mrs. Abernathy to get Miss Kincaid to the old line cabin in the north pasture. Pablo, you go with them, stay there and keep watch." The men nodded, understanding the urgency in their boss's tone, and rode off toward the ranch house. Logan continued his work on the fence, his mind churning with plans and contingencies. By the time he returned to the house that evening, Violet was gone, along with Mrs. Abernathy. A note on the kitchen table told him they'd taken food and blankets, as instructed. Logan spent a restless night, sleeping with his rifle close at hand. At dawn, he was already awake when hoofbeats announced the arrival of visitors. He opened the door to find James Kincaid and two unfamiliar men. The sheriff was noticeably absent. "Mr. Carter," Kincaid greeted him, his tone less cordial than the day before. "I've returned to speak with your housekeeper." "She's visiting her sister in Austin," Logan replied coldly. "Won't be back for a week." Kincaid's pleasant facade slipped slightly. "Mr. Carter, I don't think you understand the situation. My brother's wife is his legal property. Harboring her is theft, plain and simple." "A woman isn't property," Logan replied, his hand resting on his holstered revolver. "And I told you yesterday there's no one here by that name." "Search the house," Kincaid ordered his companions. Logan cocked his revolver. "Take one step toward my door and it'll be your last." The men hesitated, looking to Kincaid for direction. The well-dressed man's face darkened with anger. "You're making a grave mistake, Carter. My brother has connections. This won't end well for you." "Your brother is a coward who beats women," Logan replied evenly. "Now get off my land before I forget my manners entirely." For a tense moment, Logan thought Kincaid might press the issue. Then the man turned his horse with a sharp jerk of the reins. "This isn't over," he promised before riding away, his men following. Logan waited until they were well out of sight before saddling his horse and riding hard for the line cabin. The small structure, used occasionally by hands checking the far reaches of the ranch, was well hidden in a stand of trees near the property line. Pablo was keeping watch outside when Logan approached, rifle resting across his knees. "Any trouble?" Logan asked as he dismounted. The ranch hand shook his head. "Quiet all night, boss." Inside, Logan found Mrs. Abernathy preparing breakfast over the small stove while Violet sat at the rough-hewn table, her face pale but composed. "They came looking for you," Logan said without preamble. "James Kincaid and 2 hired men." "No sign of your husband." Violet's hands tightened around the cup she held. "James always did Edmund's dirty work," she said quietly. "What did he say?" Logan repeated the conversation, not sparing the details. When he finished, Violet nodded slowly. "He won't give up," she said. "Edmund sees me as his possession. The fact that I left him is an insult he won't tolerate." "What do you want to do?" Logan asked, kneeling beside her chair to look into her face. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you." Violet's eyes met his, resolve hardening in them. "I won't run anymore," she said firmly, "and I won't let him threaten you or your people." "We could go to the sheriff," Mrs. Abernathy suggested. "Explain the situation." "With what proof?" Violet asked bitterly. "My word against that of a respectable businessman." "The law gives a husband rights over his wife, Mrs. Abernathy. The sheriff would be legally obligated to return me to Edmund." Logan stood, pacing the small cabin as he thought. "There might be another way," he said finally. "But I need to speak with Judge Morris in town. He owes me a favor." "What are you thinking?" Violet asked. Logan hesitated, then decided honesty was best. "Divorce," he said. "It's not easy to obtain, especially for a woman, but Judge Morris is progressive in his thinking. If he grants it, Edmund would have no legal claim on you. And if he doesn't, Mrs. Abernathy asked skeptically. "Then we'll think of something else," Logan said firmly. 2 days later, Logan returned to the line cabin with news. Judge Morris had agreed to hear Violet's petition for divorce on grounds of cruelty, but she would need to appear before him in chambers to give testimony. "It's risky," Logan admitted as they discussed the plan. "Kincaid and his men are still in town, watching for you. But the judge's office is just across from the general store. If we time it right, we can get you in and out without being seen." "And if they do see me?" Violet asked. "Then we deal with that," Logan replied grimly. "I won't let them take you, Violet, I promise you that." The following morning, Logan drove Mrs. Abernathy to town in the wagon, ostensibly to purchase supplies. Violet was hidden beneath blankets in the back, uncomfortable but well concealed. They timed their arrival to coincide with the busiest part of the morning, when the street would be crowded with shoppers and merchants, while Mrs. Abernathy created a distraction at the general store, loudly complaining about the quality of the fabric. She'd purchased the week before Logan helped Violet slip from the wagon and into the judge's office through the side entrance. Judge Morris was waiting for them, his weathered face grave as Violet recounted her marriage to Edmund Kincaid. She spoke steadily, detailing the progression from controlling behavior to outright abuse, showing the scars on her back and the poorly healed fracture in her wrist as evidence. "And you fear for your life if returned to his custody?" the judge asked when she'd finished. "Yes, Your Honor," Violet replied simply. "I believe he would kill me for the humiliation of having left him." The judge nodded thoughtfully, making notes on the paper before him. "Normally, I would require publication of notice and a waiting period," he said. "But given the circumstances, I'm inclined to expedite matters." He looked up at Logan. You're prepared to provide Miss Kincaid with protection until this is resolved? I am, Logan confirmed firmly. Very well, Judge Morris said, signing the document with a flourish. I'll issue an order of protection immediately, preventing Mr. Kincaid or his agents from approaching Miss Kincaid while the divorce petition is pending. The final decree will take some time. The law requires certain procedures, but this should provide immediate relief. Relief washed over Violet's face. Thank you, Your Honor, she said fervently. Don't thank me yet, the judge cautioned. Men like Edmund Kincaid don't always respect the law when it contradicts their desires. Be careful, both of you. They slipped out of the judge's office the way they had come, Logan scanning the street carefully before helping Violet back into her hiding place in the wagon. Mrs. Abernathy joined them minutes later, her performance at the general store having successfully drawn attention away from the judge's office. The return journey to the ranch was tense, with Logan constantly checking for pursuit. They had nearly reached the ranch when he spotted riders approaching from behind. Get down, he told Violet sharply, reaching for the rifle he kept under the seat. Mrs. Abernathy, take the reins. The housekeeper did as instructed while Logan turned to face the approaching riders. There were 3 of them, James Kincaid and his hired men, riding hard to catch up to the wagon. Keep driving, Logan told Mrs. Abernathy. Get her to the house. Be careful, Violet urged from her hiding place. Logan jumped from the moving wagon, rifle in hand, and positioned himself in the middle of the road. He raised the rifle to his shoulder as the riders approached. That's far enough, he called when they were within earshot. This is private property. Kincaid reined in his horse, his companions following suit. Where is she, Carter? He demanded. We saw you at the judge's office. I know she was with you. The judge has issued an order of protection, Logan replied evenly. Your brother has no legal right to approach Miss Kincaid. Neither do you or your men. Kincaid's face contorted with anger. A piece of paper doesn't change what's rightfully Edmund's. The law says otherwise, Logan countered. Now turn around and leave my property, or I'll have the sheriff arrest you for trespassing. One of Kincaid's men reached for his gun. Logan's rifle cracked, the bullet kicking up dirt inches from the man's horse. The animal reared in panic, nearly unseating its rider. Next one won't miss, Logan warned, already reloading. Kincaid's cold eyes assessed Logan, calculating the odds. After a tense moment, he turned to his companions. We're leaving, he said tightly. For now. To Logan, he added, this isn't over, Carter, not by a long shot. Logan maintained his position until the 3 riders had disappeared from view, then hurried back to the ranch house. He found Violet and Mrs. Abernathy in the kitchen, both women pale with worry. They're gone, he assured them. For now, at least. They'll be back, Violet said, her voice steady despite her evident fear. James won't give up so easily. Then we'll be ready for them, Logan replied. Every hand on this ranch is loyal. We'll post watches, keep you safe until the divorce is final. Violet crossed the room to stand before him, her eyes searching his face. Why are you doing this? She asked softly. You're risking everything, your ranch, your safety for me. Logan cupped her face gently between his calloused hands. Because I love you, he said simply. I think I started falling in love with you that first day when you were so frail I could have broken you with a touch, but there was still such strength in your eyes. Tears spilled down Violet's cheeks. I love you too, she whispered. I've been afraid to say it, afraid to trust it, but I do. Their lips met in a kiss that held promise and certainty despite the danger that still threatened them. Mrs. Abernathy discreetly slipped from the room, leaving them alone in their moment of connection. The following weeks were marked by vigilance. Ranch hands took turns patrolling the property boundaries, and Violet never went anywhere alone. Logan moved a cot into the front room of the house, sleeping there to be instantly available if trouble came. December gave way to January, bringing a new year and new hope. Judge Morris sent word that Edmund Kincaid had been served with divorce papers and had a month to respond before the court would proceed in his absence. What will you do when it's final? Logan asked Violet one evening as they sat before the fire. When you're truly free. She looked at him thoughtfully. What would you like me to do? Logan took her hand, tracing the lines of her palm with his thumb. I'd like you to stay, he said. Not as my guest or even as my sweetheart, but as my wife. Violet's breath caught. Logan, I know it's soon, he continued hurriedly. I know you've had reason to fear marriage, but I swear to you, Violet, our marriage would be a partnership. I would cherish your spirit, not try to break it. She studied his face, her expression softening. I believe you, she said. And yes, I'll marry you. Not because I need your protection or because I'm grateful, but because I love you and want to build a life with you. Logan pulled her into his arms, his heart fuller than he'd ever thought possible. They remained that way for a long time. Speaking of the future they would create together, the children they might have, the improvements to the ranch, the happiness they would build day by day. Their contentment was shattered 3 days later when a rider brought news from town. Edmund Kincaid himself had arrived, accompanied by his brother and several men with the hard eyes of hired guns. They're staying at the hotel, the rider reported. Asking questions about the ranch, about Miss Kincaid, heard them talking about coming out here tomorrow. Logan called his men together, explaining the situation. No one sets foot on this property without my say-so, he instructed. If Kincaid or his men try to force their way in, you have my permission to defend yourselves and Miss Kincaid by any means necessary. The men nodded grimly, understanding what was at stake. Logan spent the night cleaning and checking his weapons while Violet sat nearby, sewing with steady hands despite the threat that loomed. You should get some rest, Logan told her softly. Violet shook her head. I wouldn't sleep anyway, she replied. And I want to be with you. Morning came with a heavy fog that shrouded the ranch, limiting visibility to a few yards. Logan posted lookouts at strategic points, instructing them to signal at the first sign of approach. The signal came just after noon, a single shot fired into the air from the southern boundary. Logan moved Violet to the root cellar beneath the kitchen, despite her protests. I'm not hiding while you risk your life for me, she insisted. I need to know you're safe, Logan countered. I can't focus on stopping them if I'm worried about you being caught in the crossfire. Reluctantly, Violet descended into the cellar, Mrs. Abernathy accompanying her with a loaded shotgun. We'll be fine, the housekeeper assured Logan. Just take care of those vermin outside. Logan positioned himself on the porch, rifle at the ready. Through the thinning fog, he could make out a group of riders approaching 6 men, with Edmund and James Kincaid in the lead. Edmund was a tall, thin man with features that might have been handsome if not for the cruelty evident in his expression. Carter, he called as they neared the house. I've come for my wife, send her out and we'll leave peacefully. Your wife isn't here, Logan replied evenly, and even if she were, you have no right to her. The judge has issued an order of protection. You're in violation of that order right now. Edmund laughed, a cold sound devoid of humor. Orders, rights, these things are for ordinary men, Mr. Carter. I am not ordinary. I want what's mine and I will have it. She's not yours, Logan said, his voice hardening. She never was. A marriage certificate doesn't make a person property. Enough talk, Edmund snapped, turning to his men. Search the house, find her. The men dismounted, drawing their weapons. Logan's rifle cracked, the bullet striking the ground at their feet. Next man who takes a step toward this house gets a bullet, Logan warned. I don't want to kill anyone, but I will if I have to. From various positions around the ranch yard, Logan's men revealed themselves, all armed and ready. Edmund's expression darkened as he realized they were outnumbered. You're making a grave mistake, Carter, James Kincaid said smoothly. My brother is a powerful man. He can destroy you financially. Have you arrested? For what? A new voice interrupted. Sheriff Davis rode into the yard accompanied by 2 deputies and Judge Morris, defending his home against trespassers. Edmund turned to face the newcomers, momentarily disconcerted. "Sheriff, I'm simply trying to recover my wife who has been stolen from me by this man." Judge Morris dismounted, his expression stern. "Mr. Kincaid, I issued an order of protection explicitly forbidding you from approaching Violet Kincaid. You are in direct violation of that order." "You have no jurisdiction over me," Edmund snarled. "I'm from Missouri. Your local rulings mean nothing." "They mean plenty while you're in my jurisdiction," the judge replied calmly. "Sheriff, arrest Mr. Kincaid and his companions for violating the court order and for attempted home invasion." The sheriff and his deputies moved forward, but one of Edmund's hired guns suddenly raised his pistol. A shot rang out, but it wasn't from the gunman, it was from Logan's rifle. The man dropped his weapon, clutching his bleeding hand. In the chaos that followed, Edmund Kincaid made a desperate dash for the house. Logan leapt from the porch to intercept him, tackling him to the ground. The two men grappled in the dirt, Edmund fighting with the desperation of a man who saw his control slipping away. "She's mine," he growled, landing a blow to Logan's jaw. "I'll kill her before I let her go." "You'll never touch her again," Logan promised, retaliating with a punch that broke Edmund's nose. Sheriff Davis and his deputies quickly subdued the remaining men, including James Kincaid, who surrendered without resistance once he saw the odds had turned decisively against them. Edmund continued to struggle even as the sheriff approached to handcuff him. "This isn't over," he shouted as they dragged him to his feet. "I'll come back, she'll never be free of me." "Yes, she will," Judge Morris said firmly. "Mr. Kincaid, in addition to the charges of violating the protective order and attempted home invasion, I'm adding attempted murder based on your stated threats against Mrs. Kincaid's life. You'll be facing considerable prison time." As the sheriff led the prisoners away, Logan hurried back to the house to find Violet. She emerged from the root cellar at his call, rushing into his arms. "It's over," he told her, holding her tightly. "They're arrested. Edmund threatened to kill you in front of the sheriff and judge. He won't be free for a very long time, if ever." Violet trembled in his embrace, relief and residual fear making her knees weak. "I can't believe it's really over," she whispered. Judge Morris cleared his throat from the doorway. "Not quite," he said. "There's still the matter of the divorce. But given today's events, I think we can expedite it. In fact," he produced a document from his coat. "I took the liberty of bringing the final decree with me, requiring only my signature. After witnessing Mr. Kincaid's behavior today, I have no reservations about granting your petition immediately, Mrs. Kincaid." He signed the paper with a flourish. "Or should I say, Miss Violet?" Violet stared at the document in disbelief. "I'm free," she said, her voice catching. "Truly free." "Yes, you are," Logan agreed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Free to choose your own path, free to stay or go as you wish." "I choose to stay," Violet said without hesitation. "With you if you'll still have me." Logan's answer was to draw her into a kiss that promised a lifetime of love and respect. When they parted, Judge Morris was smiling broadly. "I don't suppose you two would be interested in another legal document while I'm here with pen in hand?" he asked. "A marriage license, perhaps?" Logan looked at Violet, raising an eyebrow in question. She laughed, a sound of pure joy that erased the last shadows of fear from her eyes. "Yes," she said firmly. "Yes, we would." 2 weeks later, on a crisp February morning, Logan and Violet were married in the ranch house parlor. Mrs. Abernathy had decorated with winter greenery and candles, transforming the simple room into a place of celebration. The ranch hands, scrubbed and uncomfortable in their Sunday best, stood as witnesses alongside Judge Morris and Sheriff Davis. Violet wore a simple blue dress that Mrs. Abernathy had helped her make, with a crown of dried flowers in her dark hair. Logan thought she had never looked more beautiful than when she walked toward him, her eyes shining with love and hope. "I take you, Logan Carter, to be my husband," she said clearly when the time came for vows. "I promise to respect your strength and to share my own, to speak honestly and listen fully, to build with you a life of joy and purpose, until death parts us." Logan took her hands in his. "I take you, Violet, to be my wife," he replied, his voice steady despite the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. "I promise to honor your spirit and cherish your heart, to stand beside you as your equal, to face whatever comes with courage and faith until death parts us." Judge Morris pronounced them husband and wife with evident satisfaction, and the small gathering erupted in cheers as Logan kissed his bride. The celebration that followed was simple but joyful, with food and music and dancing that lasted well into the evening. As twilight fell, Logan and Violet slipped away from the festivities, walking hand in hand to the creek where they had shared their first kiss. "Happy?" Logan asked, drawing her into his arms. Violet nodded, resting her head against his chest. "More than I ever thought possible," she admitted. "When you found me in that field, I was ready to die. I had nothing left, no hope, no future." "And now," Logan prompted, tilting her face up to his, "now I have everything," she said simply. "A home, a husband who respects me, a future we'll build together." She placed her hand over his heart. "You shared your bread with a starving woman, Logan Carter, but more importantly, you shared your heart. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." Logan kissed her deeply, the last light of day illuminating them as they stood together on the land they would nurture and protect, just as they would nurture and protect the love they had found against all odds. As seasons passed, the Carter Ranch prospered under their joint stewardship. Violet's natural intelligence and eye for detail complemented Logan's practical knowledge and strength. Together, they expanded the herd, improved the pastures, and built a larger house to accommodate their growing family. Their first child, a daughter they named Rose, arrived in the spring of 1878, followed by a son, Henry, named for the foreman who had changed Logan's life in 1880. As the children grew, they filled the ranch with laughter and energy that transformed it from a mere business into a true home. Violet never forgot the darkness of her first marriage, but as the years passed, the memories lost their power to haunt her. Edmund Kincaid died in prison in 1885, a piece of news that reached them in a letter from Judge Morris. Violet read the letter twice, then placed it in the fire, watching as the paper curled and blackened. "Regrets?" Logan asked quietly, standing beside her. Violet shook her head. "No," she said firmly. "Only gratitude for the life we've built." She turned to him with a smile that still had the power to take his breath away. "And it all began with a piece of bread offered to a starving woman." "Best thing I ever did," Logan replied, drawing her into his arms. "I found treasure in that field that day, though I didn't know it yet." Outside, their children's voices called them to witness some new discovery. Hand in hand, they stepped into the sunlight, moving forward together as they had since that fateful day when hunger and compassion had set them on a shared path, a path that had led them home.